In Japan, there is a long-running series of video games called the Kunio-kun franchise, and they have been around since 1986. They were originally developed by Technos Japan, the same team that developed the Double Dragon series, before being taken over by Arc System Works a few years ago. The first game was known as Neketsu Koha Kunio-kun, a beat-em-up game and pretty much the biggest influence to what we would end up seeing years down the line, as it introduced punching as well as kicking and jumping and 4-directional movement. It was released in the West as Renegade, and the following games to come from it were Neketsu Koku Dodgeball Boo and Downtown Neketsu Monogatari, respectively known as Super Dodgeball and River City Ransom, and I'm here to talk about the latter game. So without further ado, I'm Gamerbhoy here to welcome you to another episode of GB Reviews, where I'm going to take a look at River City Ransom on the NES. River City Ransom was released in Japan in 1989 and was eventually brought over to North America in 1990, before coming to Europe in 1992, where it was actually called Street Gangs. Ah yes, another one of those games where Europe got the short end of the stick by being landed with the stupidest name that nobody's going to remember it by in decades to come, just like Starwing and Probotector. Give me a break. We all know it's Star Fox and we all know it's Contra, and just like those, we all know it's River City Ransom. But I digress, moving on. River City Ransom follows a very rudimentary storyline, one which has been done over and over and over again, in that it follows two high school students known as Ryan and Alex chasing after a villain named Simon, or if you've played the American version, his name is Slick. And he has kidnapped Ryan's sister Cindy, and it's the player's job to run through the game beating up various gang members and bosses, and finally beating Simon in the final showdown. You begin the game with the option to choose either Ryan or Alex, and if you have a second player, you are able to play a two-player co-op game where each player controls one of the characters. But this game is not actually quite what you would expect. River City Ransom isn't your typical brawler beat-em-up that you would end up seeing in the likes of Double Dragon, Final Fight and Streets of Rage and many others in years to come. River City Ransom is an RPG hybrid. One of the biggest features of this game is its non-linearity, and you can explore the game's world as you see fit. You can visit stores that sell items which will increase various attributes such as punch, kick, strength and many more. All of these attributes are permanent upgrades, and you can also buy new abilities that will enhance the gameplay, such as new fighting techniques. Obtaining these abilities cost money, and the only way to earn money in this game is by getting them from enemies once they are defeated. The harder the enemy, the more money you receive. You can also carry different weapons by stealing them from enemies or finding them around the environment, and they can range from 2x4s, chains, to even wooden boxes and trash cans and brass knuckles. You can even use enemies as weapons as well. By picking them up while they're down, you can either throw them away or use them to batter other enemies. It allows you to play the game your way, and I find it very exceptional, something I haven't really seen much of on an 8-bit platform. The enemies comprise of gang members, and each member will vary in difficulty depending on the gang they are aligned to. There are 9 gangs, and they are distinguished by the colour of clothing that they wear, and the gangs are as follows: The generic dudes who wear blue, the frat guys who wear pink, the jocks who wear green, the homeboys who wear yellow, the mob who wear grey, the squids who wear maroon red, the internationals who wear dark green, the cowboys who wear dark blue, and then there is the plague and the zombies, both of whom who wear the colour red. In between fighting these gangs, you will also come across 10 bosses in the game, with 2 of them being included in a single boss battle. Now, I'm going to cut to the aspects of River City Ransom that I didn't like. This is a bit of a jump here, but I wanted to get this off my chest as quickly as possible, so here we go. First off was the repetitiveness of it. I understand this is a brawler and there is little you can do to make it less as such, but when you add RPG elements to it that involves a lot of grinding and stat increasing, it ends up becoming monotonous and tedious. And at times I was getting tired of running out of a town to fight a heap of enemies, earn money, run back, increase my abilities, run back out of the town, fight the same enemies, get more money, run back into the town, increase my stats even more, rinse and repeat. It got very irritating. And if this was done nowadays, you could safely say the developer would be just looking for a way to pad out the longevity of your playtime. That being said, it was released in 1989 and I have to look at it as such, so I cannot be too harsh on this aspect, but there is one other thing that did annoy me that I couldn't leave out or forgive that much. And this could be down to being either my own fault or the way the game was programmed, but one thing that annoyed me was the fact that there was no sure way of knowing what to do firsthand. I often came to dead ends and had to track back to find out what it was I missed, and more often than not it would have been a boss that I forgot to encounter and defeat. What the game does not tell you, at least not obviously, is that you absolutely must defeat every single boss dotted around the game in order to progress further. If you skip a boss, be it deliberately or accidentally, you have to track back and find him, and in order to even engage with the boss, you have to make sure you defeat every single enemy in the area you are meant to find him in. You would never know this immediately. Some of the bosses in the game are in one exclusive area. The second you go into that exclusive area, they are there and they will stand there on their own, and you can fight them and you can defeat them. And that's a boss fight. And then there are other bosses that do not show up straight away, and like I said, will only show up once you beat all the enemies in that area. And I find that aspect to be a bit of a contradiction to what the game tries to sell me, a non-linear sandbox beat 'em up that encourages you to go anywhere in the game's world, but there is no clear direction to tell you what to do next. Once you beat a boss, he will tell you who to fight next and where he's going to be. But you would never know that if you accidentally breezed over the dialogue. Like what I did when I got stuck trying to find a particular boss on a level and not knowing what area I had to go to clear all the enemies from. Or let's say this is my fault for not paying attention. That would be fair, except when I was told to go and fight this boss in a factory, he would not show up no matter how many times I battered all the enemies in that place. I died numerous times by falling down pits, getting into fights I didn't need to be in, all because there was one boss I didn't fight.
Apparently I'm supposed to be here to find a character, an enemy called Thor, and he's not here. Is it a glitch? Am I doing something wrong? I really don't know. There was no clear indication as to where characters are in this game, and I don't know where to find them.
And he was 3 or 4 levels back the way. If you accidentally missed a boss, you're pretty much f***ed.
Who's this? Turk? Did I fight him? I have no idea, but I might as well try. He's out of the way. The rumour's true. You're one tough dude. Okay. Going by that text box, I never beat him before. There he is. He's going to kill me.
Now,
so you found Thor.
I know I sound like I'm really ripping this game apart all of a sudden, but it did really irritate me to little end. I should have had this game beaten long before I actually did. The game should take the player roughly an hour and change if they do it properly. But more often than not, any small mistake or lack of concentration can really hurt your tempo or momentum. Backtracking is a pain in the backside to do, and it's the only real critique I have of this game. But like I said, it was made in 1989, and it was very early in this particular genre's life cycle. At the time, this was probably revolutionary. I really don't know, but it's not something I have seen before on this system or this era. But if it was made nowadays, it might have gotten more criticised for those aspects, so I have to stop critiquing it for those aspects too much and look at it as a game of its time, because it really was a game of its time in more ways than one. And I suppose, like I said earlier, it's probably my fault all of these problems took place and panned out, but I guess that's what I get for not really looking at the manual for the game or even looking at some guide. I actually did have to switch to my PC numerous times to look at the wiki guide to see what I missed so that I could go back and do it properly, because it was really starting to frustrate me. I digress, I really am going off on one of my tangents, so I'll move on. But I will say this, the good parts of River City Ransom definitely outweigh the bad. The controls are very tight and the animations very fluid. I absolutely love that you can play the game pretty much your own way. You don't have to get every single upgrade if you don't want to. In fact, if you feel up to it, you could probably beat this game without upgrading a thing if you very well wished. That's what's so unique about this game in the era it was released. And the text dialogue is also very enjoyable to read, probably one of the most charming aspects of the game. Enemies will talk trash to you as they fight you, and if you beat them so bad that they cannot get a hit into you, they will react to this calling you a freak. If you beat the same boss a second time or more, he will curse you for defeating him again. I definitely found the dialogue to be one of my favourite non-gameplay elements of River City Ransom. The music, however, is fairly basic. There isn't much to say about the music, in fairness. It is a little memorable, but it's only memorable because it plays over and over and over to the point where you don't forget it. It doesn't really entice me to go look for the soundtrack. It's brawler music. It doesn't mean it's bad, far from it. It's just not something to write home about for this game in particular. Overall, when it comes down to it, River City Ransom is a wonderful achievement for its time, and definitely one to try out if you haven't already. It is somewhat affordable, you can find it between $20 and $30, but if you have a Japanese Famicom Classic, it's already on there. And as I write this review, it's also on the Nintendo Switch if you have an online subscription. The game has had follow-ups ever since. A prequel was released in 1994 entitled Shin Neketsu Kohakuni Otaki no Banka, which is very difficult to pronounce. I had to say that over and over and over until I got it right. But it translates to The New Hot-Blooded Tough Guy, The Eulogy of Kunio and Co. Exclusively released on the Super Famicom, was not released outside of Japan. Another game called River City Ransom Underground, which was originally due to release in 2013 or 2014, was eventually released in February 2017 after successfully reaching its Kickstarter target. It serves as a direct sequel to the original game, following on from the moment you defeat the final boss. And there were a good few additions to this installment, including 4-player co-op, new types of upgrades and many more. It's a game I'm very interested in picking up and trying out, especially after playing the original game. And then there was River City Tokyo Rumble, which was released on the Nintendo 3DS in 2013 in Japan, 2015 in Korea and 2016 in the United States. And with that said, that just about does it for this review of River City Ransom on the NES. Thanks very much for watching. This has been Gamerboy talking to you on GB Gaming, where video games come first. If you enjoyed it, you know what to do. And thanks once again, and I will see you on the next episode. Cheerio.